All right, so please write down in your math notebook. Today, our math goal is to estimate sums and differences of decimals. Write down anything you know about estimation on your math notebook. All right, so hopefully you wrote down the rules for rounding because estimation is the same thing as rounding, okay? So let's see if you have the same thing I have. So don't worry about writing all this down. I am going to give you a handout of this, but hopefully you do have the important parts. You round down if the digits are 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, 0 to 4, round down. So the way I like to do it is I like to find the target number and box it in. What I mean by target number is the number that they're asking me to round to, right? And then I look at the number on the right. If it's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, I round down. The number stays the same. The target that you're rounding to stays the same. And you add a 0 to the numbers to the right, and the numbers to the left stay the same. So in this example, if I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, the first thing I need to do is find the tenths place, right? So that's what I'm going to box in. That's my target. So now I'm going to look to the number at the right. It's a 2, so it's between 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That means round down. So the 3 stays the same, and the 2 becomes a 0, and the numbers to the left stay the same. So my number rounds to 8.30. Okay, now let's look at an example for rounding up. So for rounding up, we know we have to look at the numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, right? So the digits 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tells me to round up. So I do the same thing. I find the target number, I box it in. So the place value that you're rounding to. Then if the digits are 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, that means I need to add a 1 to my target, and the rest of the numbers to the right become a 0, and the numbers to the left stay the same. So in my example here, 8.36, if I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, I put a box around my target, so I'm going to look at the 6. Oh, the 6 tells me to round up. I need to add 1 more to my tenth spot. So 3 plus 1 makes a 4, the 8 stays the same, and that becomes a 0. So 8.36 is closer to 8.40. All right. Some things to remember when you're rounding. Rounding decimals is just like rounding whole numbers. So it's doing the exact same thing. But the only thing you really have to pay attention to is the place value, right? Whether you're rounding whole numbers or decimals, the place value is the most important thing to look at. So before we get started on rounding, let's look at some little examples. So in this example, I have a number line to kind of help us review rounding. So 4.7, what's it closer to and why? So 4.7 here, is it closer to 4 or is it closer to 5? Stop the video and think about it for a moment, then come back to me. Well, hopefully you said it's closer to 5 because it's only 1, 2, 3 away from 5. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 away from 4. So 4.7 is closer to 5. All right, before we get started, I want to show you there could be different types of number lines, right? They don't have to all be horizontal. Some number lines are vertical. So where would you see a vertical number line? So stop the video and think about where would you see a vertical number line? All right, so some places you might see a vertical number line, right, is in a thermometer. Thermometers have vertical number lines. Beakers have vertical number lines. Measuring cups have vertical number lines, and a rain gauge has vertical number lines. So just keep in mind that when you were thinking about number lines, they're not always having to be horizontal. Some of them can be vertically. And so this is why sometimes we use number lines in real life. Okay, so how would you round 3.2 to the nearest whole? So remember, the nearest whole would be in my ones place, right? So 3.2, would it be closer to 3 or would it be closer to 4? Pause the video and figure out where it would be closer to and why. Okay, well, hopefully you said 3, right? Because it is only 1, 2 away, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 away from 4. Okay, if I was rounding to the nearest tenth, and with my method, right, you box in my place value and you look at the number to the right of it. Why would 1.62 round to 1.6 and not 1.7? Stop the video and see if you can figure it out. Right, because it's only 1, 2 away from 1.6. You have a lot further to go, right? 2 or less, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, round down, so rounds to 1.6. Okay, what about 1.65? What would that round to the nearest tenth? So again, I'm going to box in my tenth spot. And so that means I have to look at the 5. Now, this one's a tricky one because it's right in between, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away to 1.6, and it's also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away from 1.7. But remember, if it's the digit is 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, I'm going to round up. So that means I would add a 1 to my 10th spot, and so it means it would round to 1.7. All right, so you try one. 1.68 rounded to the nearest tenth. What number would that round to? Pause the video and round it. All right, so did you come up with 1.7? You boxed in the 6, right? And that's our target number. We're going to round to the tenths. And I saw that it's an 8, so it means I need to round up, so I need to add one more, so 1.7. And you can see in our number line, it is 1, 2 away from 1.7. All right, so before we begin, let's review a little bit our place value, right? So how many digits does a tenth have? Right, 1, right? Because I would put a 0 in my ones place, decimal, and then this number here would be in the tenth spot. So there'd be one number. How about the hundreds? Correct. There'd be 2 digits, right? Tens, hundreds. What about thousands? How many digits in the thousands? If you said 3, that is correct, right? Because it's a decimal. Then we go tenths, hundredths, thousands. Remember, decimal, tenths, hundreds, thousands. Decimal, tenths, hundreds, thousands. Okay, that's going to help us when we begin our rounding. Okay, so in our number 8 and 57 hundredths, what digit is in the tenth spot? Correct, 0 is in the tenth spot. What number is in the hundredth spot? If you said 5, you would be correct. What number is in the thousandths place? If you said 7, you are correct. Decimal, tenths, hundreds, thousands. Okay, so we're going to need to really know that so we can round, so we can find our target. Okay, so how would I round to the nearest whole? 8 and 57 hundredths, a number we just looked at. How would I round that to the nearest whole? So yes, so I need to find my target, right? What's my target? My target is the 8. So put a box around the 8 and then look at the number on the right. It's a 0. So that means what? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 stays the same. So my 8 and 57 hundredths to the nearest whole would round to 8. All right, so now you try one. So here is our number, round 31 and 75 hundredths, round it to the nearest whole and then come back to me. All right, did you get 32? Well, else you could have put a decimal 00. That still would be the same, right? Because 32 is the same thing as 32.00. Either way would be correct. Okay, let's try a different one. All right, so try this one. Round 6 and 49 hundredths. Round that to the nearest whole, then come back to me. All right, did you get 6? So if I round that, I should have boxed in the 6 because that's my target. I'm going to look at the 4. The 4 tells me 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 that it stays the same. So it's a 6. And then I ignore everything else, right? So if you put 6 or 6.00, they're both correct. Okay, let's look at this one. So if we're rounding now to the nearest hundredth, so my target is now the hundredth. So I boxed in my hundredth spot. I'm looked at the 1. The 1 is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means it stays the same. So my answer is 4 and 5 hundredths. All right, so you try one. Round 51 and 202 thousandths, round that to the nearest hundredth and then come back to me. All right, so you should have gotten 51 and 20 hundredths, right? And I put a 0 here because I'm rounding to the hundredths. So if you put 51.2, that would be 51 and 2 tenths to the 10th spot. But because I'm rounding to the hundredth spot, I need to leave my 0 there, okay? Remember I told you the zeros don't matter, but in this case, we do need the 0 because I'm rounding to the hundredth spot, okay? So hopefully that didn't trick you. Okay, so round to the nearest tenth. So I have 51 and 16 hundredths. So I want the tenths place. I'm going to box in my tenths. I'm going to look at the 6. That 6 tells me to round up. So it means I need to add 1 to the place to my target, which becomes a 2, 51 and 2 tenths. Okay, so round to the nearest tenth, 8 and 55 hundredths. So go ahead and pause the video and round that one to the nearest tenth for me. Okay, so if you round to the nearest tenth, I put a box around my target. My target is this first 5 here. There's my 10th spot. I look at the 5. It tells me that I need to add 1 more to my target. So that's going to give me 8 and 6 tenths. All right, now that we know how to estimate or round our decimal numbers, now here's the part of our math lesson, okay? So estimate the sum. Round the addends and add to find a number your sum will be close to. So in this example, I have 4 and 672 thousandths plus 6 and 337 thousandths. So first I'm going to round my numbers to the nearest whole. So 4.6 rounds to 5, 6.337 rounds to 6. 5 plus 6 is 11. Now I'm going to round each one to the nearest tenth. 4.62 rounds to 4.7, 6.337 rounds to 6.3. Add those two together and I get 11. Now I'm going to round to the nearest hundredth. So to the nearest hundredth, this is going to become 4.67. This is going to become 6.34. Add them together and I get 11.01. Now, if I were to actually add them up together like I did over here, I would get 11 and 9 thousandths. Now, which place number is closer? So was it closer if I round to the nearest whole, to the nearest tenth, or the nearest hundredth? What's my real answer closer to? Right, you should have said to the nearest hundredth, right? So rounding, if I round something, if I want to estimate, the closer I get, the further apart I round to the smallest part, of course, that's going to give me the closest estimate, right? But sometimes, like if you're at a store and you see something that costs $4.60 and something that costs $6.33 or $4.67. So I would round that in the store. Oh, 467 is close to 5, 633 is close to 6. So if I were to buy those two things, it'd be about $11, right? So you would know, do I have enough money? If I only have $12, will I be able to buy it? Yeah, I should, unless it includes taxes, right? So rounding is really helpful in the real world when we're out there and we're trying to see, do we have enough money, or any other situation, right, where it may require rounding. We could do the same thing for subtraction, right? If I have something and I give away something, how much will I have left? So that would also is helpful. So round to the nearest whole, round these two numbers to the nearest whole, find the difference and find the exact difference and see how close you are. Okay, so stop the video and try that one. All right, so for this one, when I rounded 4.117, I got a 4. When I rounded 3.283, I got a 3. 4 take away 3 is 1. If I actually did the work right over here, then you would see that 0.834 is close to 1. So I know that my answer is reasonable and it's correct. All right, so today write down what you learned today. Proof of learning by solving a problem. So write down a number with a decimal and round it either to the tenths or the hundredths. And write down a reflection or a question you still may have.